So, yeah, that's my intro. Hey guys, back to generals. We're on generals again. Today, I'm going to begin part one in the series. That's going to be dealing with tavern generals. If you want to know the difference between a tavern general and a non-tavern general, you go to recruit, you go to portrait. Whenever you're dealing with a tavern general, it will simply say at the bottom, not recruited if you haven't recruited, or it'll be in green, recruited if it's a general that you have. Like for instance, William Wallace. Oh, which I don't have. Sorry, but if it is not a tavern general, it will have the general is temporary unavailable in the tavern. That means it is not a tavern general. That's how you can tell the difference between a tavern general and non-tavern generals. It will say that on the bottom. So with that, we're going to go over tavern general. There's 109 generals in the game. 59, which is more than half of the generals, can be found in the tavern. In this series, we're going to be going through every country. We're starting with Europe and mention all the tavern generals. I'll be going over these tavern generals, tell you if they're keepable, not keepable, if you're going to keep them, what are you going to use them for, and what skills you should be applying to this general and why you should be applying those skills. Europe is the most in-depth of all the tavern generals, so this is going to be probably the longest video out of the set. So in Europe, we'll be dealing with Charles the Great first. Charles the Great is a subordinate general. His special skill that he comes equipped with is he boosts the gold production speed by 75% in subordinate cities when the general is the mayor. So you're going to put him in a sub-city. He's a sub-general. Later on, as you increase his specialty, the specialty that you're going to be taking most note of is dealing with, applied to subordinate city mayor, the trapping. It gives training speed in this subordinate city plus 20%. And also the death into survival rate in this subordinate city plus 6%. So when he's in the general inside the sub, he gives that extra benefit when you open up his specialty. Also the ruler specialty, which when it's applied when he's subordinate city as the mayor, he increases troop capacity in the subordinate city by 36%. And lastly, the empire founder. He increases construction speed in a subordinate city by 80%, but this is late game. When you first get this guy, you're not going to even be boosting him up. You're going to let him level up along with the city. You're only going to be focusing on adding skills to him. The skills you're going to be adding to Charles the Great is going to be construction. It's going to be training speed and training capacity. This is because you cannot add the gold skill to him. You can't add the gold skill to him because he already has that with with his domination skill. Next is King Arthur. King Arthur is another tavern general. You check his specialties. You see that there isn't any of his specialties that applies to when being inside of the subordinate city. But however, his caliburn says increases march size by 15% when general is leading the army. Now, this general is a general. Generally, you do not want to keep unless you need generals. You don't have a whole lot of them. You will sell them for the gold. Generals are typically worth half the gold that it costs. Here it says 28,500,000. If you happen to draw this from your hero tribute, you can sell him and get half of that back in gold. If you see him inside your tavern, you do not want to pick the general up. He will not be beneficial. You will not be raising up his specialty. The one thing he will be beneficial for, if you decide that you have to have him or have to use him, is when you're joining the alliance war and you need to put more troops into someone's attacking army. You can use King Arthur because he increases the march size. A lot of people love march size because they think they can attack with more troops. But when you send in a general that has buffs and debuffs, those buffs and debuffs typically does more for an attack than just adding a few more troops. 15% in this case, 15% of a million is an extra 15,000 troops if my math is correct. So you're not really too concerned about the amount of the troops that you're going to add, 150,000, 15,000, whatever it's going to be. It's not really that big of a difference to that attack as opposed to a buff and a debuff. It's not really that great. And this attack itself at 109, this is not a general you want to invest in at all. So you would just sell the general if you got him from one of your hero tributes or your general tributes, or you wouldn't pick him up if he popped up in your tavern unless you simply just needed a general. Next on this list is going to be Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, she increases health power increases troop health power by 10% when she's leading the army. She does have a main city defense general attribute, but she's not really a general you're going to want to put inside your main city. She does do a little bit for the defending troops with the health power, but she's a general you're typically, if you get her from one of your general tributes, you're going to just sell. You're not going to really want to keep her for anything unless you need another historic general to put inside your sub, you know what I mean, for the time being until you get one that's more beneficial. She is not a general you want to keep. You're just going to get rid of her as soon as possible. Like, as soon as you see she pop up, say, oh man, and sell her. Next is going to be Nero. Nero, he does have decent base stacks with the 113 attack, 116 defense. He reduces, which is a debuff. When you see the word reduce, it's considered a debuff. He reduces enemy troop health power by 15% whenever he's leading the army. And we see that he has a subordinate skill, the ruler, which he increases troop capacity in a subordinate city. But, you know, this is the general you typically not going to really use unless you have to. You're not going to, that debuff is okay, but, you know, it's not something that you're going to be looking forward to just getting that one debuff when there are just so many other generals that are really, really good out there. If you got the general and he was your only general you had, you're just going to just deal with it, utilize him. You're not going to put him inside your sub just to increase troop capacity. It's not really that worth it unless you just have to put him somewhere in there. You're not going to even upgrade his specialties in the first place to even get that later on. The best thing about this general is he has a 113 attack and a 116 defense. So if you were low on generals, he could be a little bit beneficial maybe on your wall or somewhere in that case. So, but other than that, Nero is another general you're just going to sell. Next up is going to be Richard the Lionheart. Richard the Lionheart is when he's inside on your wall as a defense general, he increases the capacity of your hospital. Now, I'm not going to lie, Richard Lionheart, that 118 is really, really high defense, which is exactly what you want to put on your wall. And if you got him, you're not going to be too mad. He increases hospital capacity. You know, there are a lot of better generals out there. You'll see, and later on we have some top generals that go on the wall. But this is what you would use him for. You'll be using him specifically to be put on your wall, and you're gonna increase the defense on your wall with defense skills such as especially ground troops defense. Possibly ground troop defense and ground troop health power. And I will probably add mounted troop attack along with that to give it a little bit more damage. 105 is pretty on the low side, but attacking is always better than defending. And as long as you're boosting those ground troops up with health power and defense, and that's okay. You're not going to go into his specialties at all. You're not going to utilize him. You're not going to, get this defense max, this defensive specialty up for a very long time. And by the time you're ready to go ahead and start applying them as your wall general and utilizing his other benefits, you're going to possibly more than likely get a better general to put on your wall. But if you started off with him, I wouldn't sell him immediately unless you already have a wall general. If you already have a wall general, you can sell this guy immediately. Don't even worry about it. Next up is going to be William Wallace. William Wallace is a really good general. So I've gotten him a lot of time myself to start off with. He has a pretty okay attack base at 113, and not too bad defense at 110. You're not going to really go into his specialties. You're going to hopefully get better generals later on down the line. But he is mostly a siege general if you did go into his specialties. Even though his Braveheart reduces enemy ground troops defense by 20%. And increases your siege machine attack by 20% when he's leading the army. Siege, which I found out recently in some server versus server war, can be utilized, especially at high levels, very effectively. And William Wallace is a very good siege general to have when you're going to be using siege inside your attacks and for your defense. So whenever he's leading the army, you can actually put him on your wall and increase the buffs to your siege. He's a siege general, and maybe if you don't really get a really good siege general later on, and later in the game, then you could possibly even go ahead and boost his specialties up to decrease those areas for him. As you see that his siege, if you're not going to probably go as far as the last, but you want to get to this Iron Warrior, which he enemy wounded into death when attacking is increased by 10%, and his range troop and siege machine attack go up to 10%. If you max these out, which you would just unlock them and get like that first point, maybe even the second point. Unless you just, you got nothing else to work on and you have an abundance of rune stones, then you could keep going further and further on. But he's not one that you will really want to waste your rune stones on, unless he is the best siege general that you have at that later part in the game. But he's not a general you would immediately sell, as he does have some benefit. As I mentioned, he could be put on your wall. The skills I will apply to him, since you'll be using him on your wall sometimes, I will use range attack. I will also use siege attack and mounted attack. I will use range attack, siege attack, and mounted attack on this general, and because you're going to be using them also sometimes for PvP, and because of that, you want to increase the attacks of these particular troops, because he's a general that can be utilized in that fashion. And even if you put him on a wall, those skills would apply, and he will boost the attack when you're being attacked. And he's going to do very good for you in those cases. He's not a general you generally want to look for or try to even keep, but he's not a general you will want to sell immediately upon getting him. Next up in the Europe category is going to be Gustavus Adolphus. Very weird name, very difficult to pronounce. He has a very good attack base of 115. Meaning that you're going to want to use him for an attack general. He reduces enemy range troop and siege machine defense by 15% and increases your range troop and siege machine's attack by 15% whenever he's leading the army. He also, when you go ahead and start focusing on his specialties, if you want to get that far, he also go ahead and boost siege quite high. He is another siege general better than William Wallace. He's a siege general that's better than William Wallace. So if you have him and you have William Wallace, you want to sell William Wallace because you don't really need to keep both of them. You don't really need to keep both of them. He has a higher attack than him. He does more with his debuff and, of course, have a buff along with it. So he's a better siege general than William Wallace. He also helps buff your range. So he's a general you wouldn't immediately sell until you get much better. As far as what you would add to him for skills, you're going to, of course, put siege attack if you're going to be using siege. And you're going to use all attack buffs on him. You're going to be using mounted siege and range attack for this general as well, especially since he has a base attack of 115. And next up is Edward the Black Prince. Man, he's not one of the best generals in the game, but on one of my free-to-play accounts, which wasn't really free anymore, so I had to get rid of it, he was my premier general. He was my premier general. I had a K-27. He was doing pretty decent. I did focus mostly on mounting on him. I didn't open up any of his specialties. You wouldn't want to waste the specialties on him. He becomes a ranged general once you do. He increases your ranged troops attack by 25% and reduces enemy mounted troops attack by 15% when he's leading the army. He's a ranged general, but he has a pretty low base attack at 109. He has a decent defense at a really good defense at 116. He is not a general you want to immediately sell. He can be utilized as a range general until you get something better. But he's a general you wouldn't want to just sell. The skills I would add to this guy is going to be range attack, range bonus, and possibly range defense. I may do that, or you could instead of coming out with range defense, you can but use range health power, either one. But I will go all range on him with some range attack and range bonus. Next up is going to be Charles Martel. Charles Martel, he's a sub-general. He increases the construction speed by 50% and troops training speed by 30%. So this guy I will have to check to see if you can use either of those skills. If you can't use either one of them, most of the time I only see where you can't only use one skill. In this particular case, I would think it would be construction, then you will go with but if you can't use construction or training, then you want to use the rebirth skill. This is like when you're using attacking with your subs and they die, it cuts the time down. Other than that, if you can add the construction, if you can add the training, and of course you're going to be adding the gold production to this general. Sub generals you just want to keep until you just get better, especially when they have construction speed and gold production and training speed. You want to keep these generals in your subs so they do the most for your subs. Once subs get to around 15, 16, 17, they take a very, very, very long time to continue to build to that next level because of the building speed. The building speed takes a very long time. You don't want to use your construction speed ups on subs just to get them up there when the next building is just going to take just as long and it goes directly into the next building. Even if you're using the goal to run 2 buildings at one time, it still takes a long time. Sometimes it gets to the point where it starts taking days. So you're only going to get 3 days on your building construction. You're basically only going to get 1 more construction using it. So you focus on these generals that help increase these times as much as possible. I mentioned if you can't use the training speed or the construction speed, then you want to go with, of course, the gold production, but you also have the rebirth skill. I'm pretty sure you will be able to use at least one of these 2 skills with Charles Martel. After that, the only Europe that they have left is going to be Joan of Arc and Frederick the Great. The rest of the generals inside Europe are all going to be generals that you got to get from using a general token. Joan of Arc, I've seen some people utilize her to attack bosses in the beginning because she has a health power increase of 35%, 101 attack, which is pretty bad, and 102 defense, which is really, really, really bad. If I pick her up on a hero token, I'm just going to sell her. If she pops up inside my tavern, I'm never going to buy her unless I need her to put inside of a sub because I don't have a general to put inside a sub. And the reason why you still want to put a historic general in a sub is to unlock that extra training speed that comes with having a historic general inside your sub. And with Frederick the Great, he increases ranged troop health power by 35% when he's leading the army. He has a very bad attack of 104 and 102. You're not going to be using, this is another general you're not going to be using for anything. You definitely are not going to be unlocking his specialties. You won't even pick him up if you can avoid picking him up. Sell him if he pop up in a hero token. He's just not worth keeping. So like I said, we're going to keep these things up. Next will be America. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the video, and you guys have a great day.